You ever have one of those moments when someone says something so unexpected that the whole world just stops for a second? That's exactly what happened to me at what was supposed to be a simple family dinner dot. It was Dad's birthday. The kind of night where everyone's smiling, talking, pretending everything is fine. But I could feel it, that strange tension in the air, like someone was holding on to a secret. And then my sister, Emma, leaned forward with that confident grin and said something that made my heart drop. She said, "Mom and Dad told me I could move in with you." I froze. My mind went blank. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her, but no one corrected her. My mom was nodding. My dad looked proud. And everyone waited for me to smile back. But I couldn't, because what Emma didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the house she was talking about wasn't mine anymore. I'd sold it just a week earlier. And in that single moment, I realized there was no easy way to tell her. No way to make it right. That dinner, it started with laughter. But by the end of the night, it changed everything. The restaurant buzzed with quiet chatter and the soft clinking of glasses. Candlelight flickered across the table, casting warm glows on my parents' faces. Tonight was supposed to be simple, a family dinner to celebrate Dad's birthday. But even before the first course arrived, I sensed something wasn't right. My sister Emma looked unusually cheerful, her grin wider than usual, her eyes gleaming with a secret. Mom kept glancing at her, nodding subtly, as if waiting for the perfect moment. I could tell they were hiding something. I just didn't know that their little surprise would change everything forever. I tried to focus on my meal, forcing small talk about work and weather, but my stomach churned. The waiter poured wine, and I sipped slowly, pretending to listen. My father laughed at one of his own jokes, and then, right between the laughter, Emma leaned forward with her announcement. "Mom and Dad promised I could live with you," she said, her voice filled with excitement. My fork froze mid-air. For a moment, I thought I misheard her, but everyone's faces told me otherwise. Mom smiled proudly. Dad cleared his throat, and my pulse began to race beneath my skin. The air seemed to still around us. I looked from one face to another, trying to process what she had just said. "Live with me?" I repeated quietly. My mother nodded as if it were already settled. "Yes, dear. You've got that big house all to yourself now, don't you?" That sentence hit like a stone dropped into water, ripples spreading through my chest. I felt the words, "That's awkward," climb into my throat, but my brain screamed at me to stay quiet. Yet something inside me couldn't. I took a slow sip of water and finally said it. "That's awkward," I began, trying to sound casual. "Because I sold the house last Friday." For a moment, there was no reaction, just blinking eyes and the faint hiss of air conditioning. Then Emma's smile faded. My father's hand paused mid-reach. My mother's wine glass clinked softly against the table. The silence was sharp, like glass. Emma tilted her head, her voice small. "You're joking, right?" I shook my head slowly. "No, it's gone. The papers were signed last week." My mother's lips parted in disbelief. "You sold the family house?" she whispered. I nodded. "It's not ours anymore." It felt like confessing a crime. My chest tightened as I spoke. Their eyes burned into me. Questions, confusion, betrayal. The restaurant chatter faded into background noise. Emma's hands trembled as she placed her napkin on the table. "Why would you do that?" she asked. I didn't have an easy answer. Mom's face went pale. "Without telling anyone?" she hissed, her voice rising just enough to turn heads. I looked down, ashamed. "It wasn't planned," I said. "I had to act fast." Emma pushed her chair back. "Had to? You had to sell our childhood home." The tension cut through the room. I could feel the heat rising behind my ears. I had known this confrontation was inevitable, but I didn't expect it to happen like this, not in public, not surrounded by strangers. My father remained quiet, his gaze distant, almost detached, as if he already knew what I was hiding. The candles flickered as if reacting to the unease. I wanted to explain everything, the calls, the threats, the desperation, but fear silenced me. "It wasn't your decision to make," Emma said through clenched teeth. I wanted to shout back, "It wasn't yours either," but the guilt kept me still. Segment 5. The secret reason the truth was uglier than they knew. I hadn't sold the house for money or convenience. I sold it to cover Dad's gambling debts. Months earlier, loan sharks had come to my door demanding payment. He had begged me not to tell Mom or Emma, and like a fool, I agreed. That night, I'd signed the sale papers trembling. The house wasn't just bricks and walls, it was years of memories. I felt like I'd sold our childhood itself. But watching Dad's fear back then, I believed I was saving him. Now, watching Mom's disappointment, I wasn't so sure anymore. Every eye at the table waited for my justification. I wanted to shout the truth, to expose Dad and end my burden. But one look at his face stopped me. He couldn't even meet my eyes. My silence became my confession. The family's faith in me cracked right then. Emma's voice broke through my thoughts. "So what now?" she asked. "You just walk away, start fresh, and leave us behind?" I felt the sting of her words. "It wasn't like that," I said softly. "Then what was it like?" she demanded. Her tears caught the candlelight, shining like broken glass. Mom's trembling hands reached for her water glass, trying to stay composed. "You should have talked to us," she whispered. "Families don't make decisions like this in secret." The irony stung, because secrets were exactly what had driven me to this point. Secrets none of them even knew existed. I turned to Dad. "Say something," I pleaded silently. But he only shifted in his chair, eyes fixed on his plate. The man I had tried to protect was nowhere to be found. In that moment, I realized I had saved him, but lost everyone else in the process. Finally, Dad spoke. "I told her to do it," he said quietly. The words dropped like stones into water. Mom's face drained of color. "What did you say?" she asked. "It wasn't her choice," he added. "It was mine." The truth shattered the thin layer of calm left between us. Emma's eyes widened. "You knew?" she gasped. "You let her take the blame." Dad looked down, shame twisting his features. "It was for the best," he muttered. "For who?" Mom's voice cracked. Tears filled her eyes as she realized how deep his lies had gone and how long I carried them. The noise in the restaurant seemed to fade, replaced by the thudding in my chest. For months, I had been the villain in my own story. Now, with one confession, Dad had rewritten the script and made me the scapegoat. Emma stared at him, betrayed beyond words. Mom pushed her chair back, shaking her head. "I can't do this," she whispered, standing up. "After everything we built." Her voice trailed off. Emma looked between us, her expression a mixture of rage and sorrow. I felt like the walls were closing in, the room spinning around my guilt. Dad reached for Mom's hand, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me," she said coldly. I tried to speak, to make her understand, but every word felt meaningless. The house wasn't just property. It was proof that we once believed in each other. And now, even that was gone. Emma grabbed her purse, tears streaking down her cheeks. "You both disgust me," she said, her voice trembling. "You lied to all of us," She turned and walked away, leaving her plate untouched. The clatter of her heels echoed long after she disappeared. None of us tried to stop her. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sat back down, staring blankly at her glass. Dad rubbed his forehead, muttering apologies that no one wanted to hear. I felt hollow. The weight of what I'd done and what I hadn't said pressed down like a physical burden. When the check came, no one reached for it. The waiter hesitated, eyes flickering nervously between us. I pulled out my card, trying to act normal. My hands trembled as I signed the slip. Dad's reflection in the window looked older, smaller, defeated. I almost didn't recognize him anymore. As we left the restaurant, the cool night air hit my face like punishment. Mom didn't say goodbye. Dad muttered, "We'll talk later." I nodded, knowing we wouldn't. The damage was already done. The family I thought I was protecting had splintered into something unrecognizable. Hours later, my phone buzzed. Emma's name flashed across the screen. I almost didn't answer, but guilt won. "Hey," I said softly. Silence, then a shaky breath. "You could have told me," she whispered. Her tone wasn't angry anymore, it was hurt. That was somehow worse. "I thought I was protecting everyone," I said. "From what?" she asked. I hesitated, eyes closing. "From the truth." There was another long silence, then the faint sound of her crying. "You think secrets protect people," she said, "but they only protect pain." Her words carved deep into me. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen, a stranger looking back. My secret had destroyed everything I loved. And for the first time, I wondered if the house wasn't cursed by memories, but by our lies. Days passed. The house keys sat on my counter, heavy as guilt. The buyers would move in soon. I visited one last time. Empty walls, hollow echoes, a ghost of my past. I touched the doorway we'd marked with our heights as kids. The pencil lines had faded, just like us. In the living room, I sat on the floor, the smell of dust and paint lingering. I remembered laughter, birthday candles, Dad fixing the radio, Mom humming in the kitchen. Now there was only silence, thick, suffocating silence. The kind that doesn't fade, only lingers in the corners of memory. As I stood to leave, I whispered, "I'm sorry." It wasn't to the house, it was to Emma, to Mom, to Dad, and maybe to myself. I locked the door, left the key in the mailbox, and walked away without looking back. A week later, a new family moved in, laughter spilling from the windows. I sat in my car across the street watching. They had kids, a golden retriever, a garden gnome already placed by the porch. It was everything we once were. Everything we'd lost. The little girl twirled in the yard, her father chasing her with a hose. I smiled through the ache. That house wasn't haunted, It deserved a fresh start. As the sold sign came down, I realized letting go didn't mean forgetting. It just meant surviving. I drove away slowly, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror until it disappeared behind the trees. I didn't cry. I just felt empty, like a chapter had ended, but the story hadn't. Somewhere deep down, I hoped Emma would call again. One morning, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single note in familiar handwriting. I understand now. Maybe we all needed to lose the house to find the truth. It was signed Emma. My throat tightened as I read her words again and again. Tucked behind the note was a photo. The four of us on the porch, years ago. Mom holding lemonade, Dad laughing, Emma with pigtails, and me smiling without secrets. The picture was faded, creased, but alive. I realized she hadn't forgiven me completely, but she hadn't abandoned me either. That letter sat on my desk for weeks. Every time I looked at it, I thought about how truth, once hidden, has a way of resurfacing no matter how deep we bury it. Families break, heal, and rebuild. Maybe someday we'd rebuild too. Months later, we met again, a quiet coffee shop, neutral ground. Emma smiled softly when she saw me. "Still surviving?" she asked. "Barely," I joked. We both laughed, awkward but sincere. For the first time in a long while, I saw the sister I'd missed, not the judge I'd feared. We talked for hours about life, about Dad's recovery, about Mom slowly softening. The wounds were still there, but they weren't bleeding anymore. "You did what you thought was right," Emma said. "Even if it hurt." Her eyes glistened. I nodded. "I just wish right didn't feel so wrong." When we hugged goodbye, it wasn't perfect. It was fragile, careful, but real. As she walked away, I realized forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It simply lets you keep moving forward. That night, after everything, the shouting, the silence, the tears, I drove past the house one last time. The windows were glowing softly, lights shining through like memories that refused to fade. It wasn't ours anymore, but in a strange way, it didn't matter. Because maybe it was never really about the house. Maybe it was about everything it stood for: family, promises, forgiveness. For months, I'd carried the guilt of what I'd done. I thought I'd destroyed something we can never get back. But life has a strange way of healing, little by little. When you stop trying to fix the past and start learning from it. Emma and I talk now. Not every day, but enough. The anger is still there sometimes, but so is understanding. Mom's softer too, tired but open. And Dad, he's trying. We all are. And maybe that's what matters most. I used to think selling that house was the worst mistake I'd ever made. But now I'm not so sure. Because losing it forced us to face the truth, not just about the house, but about ourselves. About the lies we told, the things we hid, and the love we almost lost. Dad, as I drove away that night. The streetlights blurred in my rearview mirror. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel haunted by the past. I felt free. The house was gone, yes. But the family, broken as we were, was still standing. And maybe that's the real ending. Not the loss, but the letting go.